Well, we haven't done. I don't know if we've ever done a post-game show after a basketball game. I was trying to think if we've ever done one intentionally. Otherwise, I don't think we've ever, like we do with football, we do a special show after every game. Well, there's only like 12 games, 13 games, so man, it's a little bit easier to pull that off. It's not quite as much of a commitment as doing it for 30-some games as it was with basketball. And I don't think we've ever actually done a post-game show after basketball. But with the way this schedule worked out this week, with our podcast usually being, our live stream usually being on Wednesday nights, and Pitt having a game on Wednesday night, an 8 o'clock game, I just thought, doesn't make sense to do the show on Tuesday and then the game is the next day. What if we just stick with our regular Wednesday, and instead of doing it at 8:30 on Wednesday, we do it at, as is the case right now, 10:15. We do it after the game. Why don't we just do a post-game show for basketball? It's just the timing lines up. The schedule just sort of works out perfectly. And can't say I had a lot of optimism about this game. Can't say I had a lot of faith in Pitt winning this game. Can't say I had a lot of belief in Pitt's ability to pull this one out. I went into this game tonight, Pitt at North Carolina, looking at the Tar Heels and saying, well, they've scored 70 or more in 11 out of their 14 ACC games to this point. And Pitt is 0-9 when opponents score 70 points this season. They've never beat a team that scored 70 points in a game this season. They've scored 70 themselves a handful of times, like 4 times, and I think they were 2-4 in those, 6 times, and I think they were 2-4 in those 6 games. But when their opponent has scored 70, they've never won this season. North Carolina averaging like 77, 78 points per game in ACC games this year. Again, like I said, they've topped 70 in 11 out of their 14 games, conference games before today. They had some duds along the way. They were capable of putting up a clunker. But given their trend of scoring 70 plus and given Pitt's trend of losing when the opponent scores 70 plus, I just couldn't rightfully pick couldn't rightfully pick Pitt to win this game. And it shows once again that either I don't know what I'm talking about, which is partially true, but largely true, or also, this Pitt team's incredibly hard to predict. Because who could have seen a night where Pitt would come out, score almost 80, hold North Carolina under 70, and lead by as many as 20? Who could have seen a game where Pitt would positively dominate the first half, 40-23, outscoring the Tar Heels, scoring 40 in the half? I think, yes, for just the second time this season that they scored 40 plus in the first half. They also scored 44 in the first half against UMBC. They were losing 55-44, but that's beside the point. Who could have foreseen a game where Pitt would score 40 points in the first half to take a 17-point lead? Who could have foreseen a game where Pitt would build that lead to 21 points at a certain point in the second half? And then who could have foreseen a game where Pitt would watch its 21-point lead whittle away all the way down to 6 with less than 2 minutes to go, 1:50 on the clock, only to step up and make huge plays in the final 2 minutes of the game, playing with 3 of their most important players, arguably their 3 most important players, although I think Ethiel Horton is certainly working his way into that conversation, but playing with 3 of their most important players in John Hughley, Mogi, and Jamarius Burton, all having 4 fouls and staying on the court. I don't think Gee or Burton left the court after they got their 4th foul. Hughley did, and then he came back in and played the final couple of minutes with his 4th foul and made huge plays down the stretch. Femi Odikale makes a 1-and-1. Huge play down the stretch. And we'll go over all the little sort of individual plays and the particulars of this one because there's a lot to break down with this game. But start to finish, tell me what point of this game could you have seen coming? Even if you want to say you could have seen it coming that Pitt would blow the lead, I don't really believe you because I don't think anyone actually saw the fact that Pitt would have that kind of lead to begin with. A remarkable performance, a remarkable effort, outstanding top to bottom, very little issues to find other than, they committed 18 turnovers. But that's really the lone flaw in this game. I can't really find, they got out rebounded 29-28, but part of that is that Pitt only had 5 offensive rebounds because they shot so well. 51% from the floor, 59% from 3, and they made 18 out of 20 free throws. It wasn't a perfect game, not a flawless game, but pretty damn close. And for this team, it's about as close to a flawless game as you're going to get. And it kind of had everything that, I wouldn't say everything that you want, because you don't want them to build a big lead and then blow that lead. But I think if you look at each individual storyline from this game and you're a Pitt fan, you got to feel pretty great. The fact that they were able to dominate North Carolina like they did in the first half, and they were able to even stretch that lead out to 21. They were up 21 on North Carolina on the road. Now, beating North Carolina is not all that new. Jeff Capel, I should say at least Pitt, has won 2 out of the last 3 against North Carolina. But going on the road with this year's team against the talent that North Carolina has, to be up by 20, they doubled them up at one point in the first half. It was 29-14. They had them doubled up. And then they take a 20-point lead in the second half. Like, you have to love those storylines. And then you don't like the fact that they blew the lead. But boy, if you're a Pitt fan, you got to feel great about the fact that they held on. Because there's receipts for this. You can find it in the game thread on the message boards. You can find it on Twitter. As that lead whittled down, as North Carolina pulled within a dozen and pulled within 10, and then got within 6 with a minute 50 left to play, Pitt fans were giving up. And I understand it. Look, I thought this is the way it's going too. But a huge little stretch there, with a minute 50 left to play at 69-63. And this was the point, and like I said, we're going to talk about a lot of different individual plays, but this was such a crucial sequence here. North Carolina was making it really tough to inbound the ball. North Carolina was making it really tough on Pitt. Will Jeffers ends up, this was a little bit earlier in the half by a couple minutes. Will Jeffers calls the final timeout, uses Pitt's final timeout with like 4 minutes left to go because he can't make the inbounds pass. And I thought he called it quick, but it was Will Jeffers who got, I think it was the Virginia game. Remember he had the 5 count against him on the inbounds pass? It ended up being a crucial play. So Will Jeffers calls that timeout. But they were having issues. North Carolina was pressuring the inbounds really well. And so at one point, Femi Odukale tries a deep pass over half court to Ethiel Horton. He gets picked off. Carolina intercepts it. Again, up, with a 6-point lead, less than 2 minutes to play, all the momentum on Carolina's side. And Carolina, people go crazy, but Carolina loses the ball and it rolls out of bounds. Huge break for Pitt. Huge mistake for Carolina. And then what happens after that? John Hughley, playing with 4 fouls, gets the ball, goes up and gets an and one. And he did it again. Let's see, it was about that. That was about the minute 32 mark. And roughly 40 seconds later, after Carolina made it a 7-point game, 72-65, I think there were questions about whether Pitt was doing the right thing to try and drain the clock, to try and run the clock, if they were making a mistake. But the way Horton handled the ball, the way Odukale handled the ball, the way Burton handled the ball, they made it work. They took the time off. And then Odukale drives in. He gets a little bit stuck, dumps it off to Hughley, another basket. John Hughley, 5 points in the final minute and a half. Huge plays. Huge plays. And Pitt ends up holding on. And I think you can probably pick which part of this you like the best, building the big lead or holding on at the end. But it all wraps up as one really good win for Pitt. And RPI, we'll look, and I don't know where North Carolina was. I don't know what this will do to Pitt's Ken Palm rankings. It's not putting them on the bubble or anything like that. And that's not what I'm talking about when I say this is a really good win for Pitt. But for a team like this that's been through everything they've been through this season, all the close losses, all the 1-point defeats, all the baskets that went at the end, all the times they got their butts kicked, because let's not forget those as well. Anytime you can get a win is a good thing, obviously. But some of these last few wins, beating NC State to finally break that streak and finally, turn the tide there after going to Florida State and winning a low-scoring battle, a grind fest against the Seminoles, and then to go to Carolina to win 3 ACC games in a row, for Jeff Capel. I was going to say for the first time for Jeff Cable, but he did it last year when they beat Syracuse back-to-back and then Duke. But to get a 3-game ACC winning streak, first 3-game winning streak of the season, and to do it against ACC opponents, with Georgia Tech on Saturday, another opportunity to keep going. Man, it's a really good win. It's a really good win for Pitt. It's a really valiant performance, and there's a lot of individual performances as you look down this box score. You know, you see John Hughley with 18 points and 5 rebounds, going 5 of 6 from the line. You see Jamarius Burton going 14 points and 7 rebounds, 6 of 6 from the line. You see Femi Odikale with 10 points and 9 assists. Gotta like that. And then Ethiel Horton. I mean, what can you say about Ethiel Horton right now? I wanted to check Mogi's stat line real quick, too. He had 11 points, 5 rebounds, 2 blocks. He was 2 of 4 from 3. But Horton, though, 19 points, 5 of 9 from the floor, 5 of 5 from 3, makes 4 free throws, gets 5 rebounds, turns the ball over once and has a steal, plays 40 minutes in this game. And it's a tired refrain with this team. It's a tired cliche. It's a tired thing that we've been saying over and over and over again. We said it from the beginning of the season when Horton was out, and some of these close losses and some of these different games, we said it over and over about the impact he could have made, about the impact his loss did have, and about the impact that, you know, what it meant for Pitt to not have Ethiel Horton for all the games he didn't play. Just like the impact of not having Nike Subandi for all the games he didn't play. And sometimes it was said, oh, you're overrating him. You're making too much out of him. Well, Ethiel Horton, since he got back into the starting lineup, since he got his legs back under him and got back into sort of playing, I don't want to say playing shape. It's not necessarily that he was out of shape, but you know what I mean? Got comfortable again on the court. In his last 3 starts, the 3 games he has started, he scored 61 points. You're talking about a guy scoring 20 points per game, and I don't expect him to average 20 points per game over the course of a season. But this team needed as much offense as they could get. And Horton is a scorer. If he's anything, he's a scorer. That's what he does. And it's what he has done. He sure as hell did it tonight. Huge impact on this game. His shooting. 5 of 5 from 3. He's the best shooter on the team. And right now, he's one of the best players on the team. And I don't know who the clear best player on the team is. I mean, not after a game like this where you had such a group effort. Which again, you know, we talk about storylines you have to appreciate from this game. You know, the group effort aspect of it. I went over the stats. You know, 19 points for Horton, 18 for Hughley, 14 for Burton. Guy and Odikale both end up in double figures. You know, and Guy's got the full stat stuffer line, and Odikale's got the 9 assists, and you know. You can go through all of that, and you get this group effort from the starters. And then you get, you know, Will Jeffers plays 19 minutes, Noah Collier plays 6 minutes. And I think those guys each had 1 or 2 or maybe 3 plays where they really helped the team. Some big plays. And that was the case, I mean, that's been the case a few times in the last couple of games. It was a group effort, it was a team effort. And again, I mean, yeah, they rely largely on the starters, and Burton played 38 minutes, Odikale played 40, Horton played 40. Guy and Hughley had 28 and 27. But it really was a group effort, and they didn't need to rely on one guy. It wasn't just about Hughley, although he was a big part. It wasn't just about Horton, although he was a big part. It wasn't just about Burton or Odikale or Guy. His team won as a team. And it's impressive. It's impressive to see. And I think, you know, I mean, for Pitt fans who sat through a lot and watched a lot this season, for Pitt players who have experienced a lot through, you know, the first 26 games of the season, you know, having some success and winning a game like they won tonight, the way they won it, I mean, I think you got to feel pretty good. You know, and you know, just for a night, stop thinking about the long-term future of the program. Stop thinking about what the last 3 years have been or the last 4 years. Stop thinking about hiring coaches and firing coaches and all these different things and whether the team is talented enough. Maybe they're just not talented enough. Maybe they are talented. I don't know. I don't know what the right next step is for the program. But what I do know is that tonight, they got a heck of a win. And so kudos to all those guys. Kudos to the players. Kudos to the coaches. They're gonna fly back from Chapel Hill, a happy group, with an opportunity on Saturday to add another one when they host Georgia Tech, who's a very beatable team. All right, let's jump into the live chat, because we're here on the we're here on the live stream on the Panther-Lair show at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. We appreciate everybody tuning in. I want to tell you real quick, just because everybody's here, about home field. I've got my warm up the Victory Light shirt on. It's a football helmet on this one, but pretend like it's a basketball. If I cover certain parts, it could look like a basketball. But homefieldapparel.com is the site you got to go to. They have great Pitt gear, and it's super soft, super well fitting. I love how the shirts fit. I love how soft they are. It's just a great, it's a high quality product. And as you can see, they've got great logos and great designs on it. So, go to homefieldapparel.com. If it's your first order, use the promo code LAIR, LAIR. You get 15% off. 15% off your order. So definitely go and check that out at homefieldapparel.com. I think you'll like what you see. All right, I want to jump in here to some comments and questions. We got super chatters jumping in, and I appreciate that. If you want to be a super chatter, you can hit that $sign at the bottom of the screen there. Toss a couple bucks to the podcast. We appreciate your support. We'll be sure to answer your questions and read your comments. And Michael B. gets it started with the super chatter. Says, Chris, great win and shocking win. Did you see this coming at all? And do you think we can keep piling up the wins the rest of the season? Thanks. No, I didn't see it coming. We do our picks on Panther-Lair.com. Me and Jim Hammett and Matt Steinbrink and Houston Wilson and Steven Gertz. There's 5 of us. And all 5 of us thought North Carolina would win this game. And I told you, the two stats that stood out to me is that Pitt is 0-9. Pitt still is 0-9 when allowing opponents to score 70 or more this season. And North Carolina scored 70-plus in 11 out of their first 14 ACC games. They averaged 78 points per game in ACC contests. And I said, well, that's a bad combination for Pitt. North Carolina scores 70 on the reg, and Pitt loses to teams that score 70 on the reg. So, seemed pretty unlikely that they would win this game. And all 5 of us thought that. So, no, I didn't see it coming. What can they do the rest of the way? Like I said, Saturday they've got Georgia Tech at home. Then they host Miami. They host Duke on March 1st, Coach K's final road game. And then they go to Notre Dame to close the regular season. So 4 more games left. Georgia Tech is a team they should beat. They really should. They're bad. Georgia Tech just got destroyed by NC State. Last night or the night before? I forget. I think it might have been Tuesday night. I forget. And Pitt beat NC State. So that should be a game that Pitt can win. That should be a game that Pitt does win against Georgia Tech. Miami, a little more challenging. Jeff Capel's had some kind of weird success against Miami. So I'm not going to rule that out entirely, but it's going to be a challenge. Duke, I think, is going to be a really tough one for Pitt to win. And then they finish at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has been pretty good. They're at the top of the ACC right now in record. But Pitt lost to Notre Dame by 1 point in December. And I think right now, even if Notre Dame has gotten better, I think Pitt is a better team than they were when they hosted Notre Dame on December 28th. So I'm not going to rule that one out either. Here's the interesting thing. So Pitt right now is 6-10 in ACC games. Over Jeff Capel's first 3 seasons, Pitt improved its win percentage in conference games each year. They went from 3-15 in his first season, 6-14 the next year, and then 6-10, last year. So the conference win percentage went up each year. Right now they're 6-10. They have to win 2 more out of these final 4 games to get to 8-12, which would improve their conference win percentage over last season. If you want to look for markers of improvement year to year, that's one of the ones that you could actually point to. There's not a lot that you could point to of improvement year to year under Jeff Capel's time here for a variety of reasons. But win percentage in conference games is one of those things you can actually point to. And to improve that number again, to make year 4 better than year 3, which was better than year 2, which was better than year 1, they need to win 2 of the final 4 to finish 8-12 in the ACC. I mean, they have a chance. I think the Miami game is going to be a key game. They gotta beat Georgia Tech. Don't blow that one, and then you got to win one of those final 3. Conceivably, if they keep improving as they have been over the past 2 weeks. I think they can beat Miami, and I think they can win at Notre Dame. I'm not necessarily saying they will, because I think this team still has plenty of inconsistency in them. But they can. And that would be very interesting. Let's see here. Scott Lynch says, I was surprised we held them off at the end. John Hughley is a difference maker. Wonder about our record if Ethiel Horton played all season. I mean, that's going to be that's going to be a what if that hangs over this season for Pitt basketball. Pretty much, for the future. That's going to hang over this team of what could they have done, what would they have been if Ethiel Horton had played all season. And then, you could take it a step further and say, what would it have been if Nike Sabandi played all season? These are two offensive guys. These are two guys who score. And this is a team that struggled to score. When I give you that stat that they're 0-9 in games when opponents have scored 70 plus, what does that tell you? Pitt has had, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. So 7 now. Counting tonight. 7 out of 27 games when they've scored 70 or more. So this is an offensively challenged team. It was a team that was always going to be offensively challenged. And that was even with Ethiel Horton and Nike Sabandi. You take those two guys out of the mix and you lose a significant amount of scoring without really having the players to make up for it. You didn't really have anyone who could fill the scoring void that was going to be left by Ethiel Horton and Nike Sabandi. You didn't have the scoring, you didn't have the players to fill the scoring void left by either guy, let alone both. You took two of the best and maybe most proven offensive players off this team. Now, Jamarius Burton has definitely stepped up and been a bigger source of offense than I think a lot of people expected, bigger than I expected. Mogi has stepped up and been a bigger source of offense than a lot of people expected, more than I expected. I expected Mogi to be a defensive stopper. That was supposed to be his role. I expected Jamarius Burton to be more of a facilitator, a setup point guard, not necessarily a guy who's going to do a lot of scoring on his own. That has, he has obviously shown that he's got a lot more in his game than that. I didn't know what to expect out of John Hughley, but he doesn't really fill the same roles that Horton and Sabandi were going to. And so you took those guys out of the mix and you lost a bunch of games because you couldn't score enough. You go down the list, they lose to, Vanderbilt, they score 52 points against Vanderbilt, 53 against Minnesota, 56 against Virginia, 52 against Monmouth. They scored 48 against Clemson, 56 against Boston College, 47 against Virginia Tech. All these low-scoring games, and those are the ones they lost. They also won scoring 59 twice, and they won scoring 56 when they beat Florida State. So this team that can't score enough, now they've got a guy in Horton who's come in and he's averaged 20 points per game over the last 3 since he moved back into the starting lineup. Yeah, I think he makes a pretty big impact. And I think he definitely changes things for this team. But that's in the past. You can't change those games. So, you just look at what he can do for you going forward. He's got to be feeling good. I think Pitt's got to be feeling good about him. Scott Lynch also said, Capel is our coach next season. This one sealed it. I think if you've been listening to this podcast, reading the message boards, I've been pretty consistent for the last month or two that I really don't see anything changing. That my expectation was that Jeff Capel will be back. For one thing, and this is just the God's honest truth, and I don't mean to be cynical on a night when Pitt won, but part of the reason he's not going anywhere is because I don't think Pitt can afford to pay him to go away. A buyout is significant. That's a big chunk of money. It's supposed to be a deterrent. It's supposed to be a deterrent for both sides. From breaking the contract. And I don't think Pitt is in a position to pay that kind of buyout right now. And so I think, barring some historic, catastrophic meltdown, which there have been points where we thought maybe it was on the verge of it. The first half against Virginia Tech, that game at home, it certainly looked like it could be on the verge of that. But outside of, historic catastrophe, I didn't see anything really changing. Even if it was a rough season, and certainly it's been rough pretty much all year, I didn't see any change happening. Now, wins like this probably make it a little more palatable for fans, but I don't think Heather Lyke walked out of, the Dean Dome tonight saying, well, all right, that settles it. I'm keeping Jeff Capel. I don't think he was ever all that close to going anywhere anyway. But yeah, I think this has to make it more palatable for fans. And that's the other thing I'm thinking about coming out of this game and coming out of the last few games is you're seeing little flashes of what this team potentially could be. Because all the guys who contributed tonight outside of Mo Gee, which is to say the other 4 starters, can all come back next year. They all have eligibility left. Jamarius Burton can get one more year if he wants for the COVID season. Femi Odekale is only a sophomore. John Hughley's only a sophomore. Theo Horton, I think, has 1 or 2 years left. 2 years left, I think. So you've got all these guys who can come back. Plus, Nike Sabandi can return. Plus, Jefferson Collier and Easy Akudo could come back. He's got another year. And then some of the guys that we really haven't seen, but maybe have some potential to develop, in Nate Santos and Chris Payton. You can see a little bit of what's sort of building. You can see some of the improvement. You can see the impact that Horton has. You can see how Femi Odekale has come along. And Odekale, I think, I said this, I don't know. I think I said it a week or two ago. I know I said it to somebody today in conversation of that I feel like Odekale, as Jamarius Burton has further emerged as an offensive weapon, as he has further emerged as a scorer, as a scoring guard, I think Femi Odekale has been able to not sink into in a derogatory term, but sort of settle into more of a facilitator role. So he has the 9 assists tonight. I think that was a career high. But I feel like he's been doing more and more of that. He had that little stretch when he averaged like 20 a game, 20 points per game. But I think he's been doing a better job at setting other guys up. So, John Hughley's final basket is set up by Femi Odekale. And I think Odekale now has 2 guards he can dish to. He's got 2 bigs he can dish to. He's got a lot of places to go with the ball. And he doesn't need to be a scorer. He needs to facilitate his teammates and set up his teammates and then pick and choose his spots to score. He picks and chooses his spots to score and sets up his teammates. I think that shows a lot of development on his part, and I think we've seen a lot of that. I think we've seen a lot of development on the part of Femi Odekale, and we've seen a lot of growth and maturation just over the course of this season, which you would expect and or hope to see out of a guy who's a sophomore. I think you look for guys to develop like that, and I think he has. And so, again, I think as the course of the season has gone on, I think you've seen more of that kind of core foundation grow and develop. And, you see the potential of what it could be maybe next season. And so I think, no matter what you think about Jeff Capel or the job he's done, I think you can feel like, well, there might be something growing here. There might be something being built here. Another super chatter coming in. Let's see, what do we have? There's RJC, man. I don't know. Let's see. Looks like I might be jumping in on a conversation. RJC, man, I appreciate you being a whatchamacallit. I appreciate you being a super chatter. I'm not sure what your comment that you wanted to say is. The refs are more responsible for the wins than Jeff Capel is. I'm not going to go too far down the road of negativity here. They just got a really good win. They battled really hard. They fought really hard. They played really well against North Carolina, against one of the blue blood name brands in the ACC, against a team that had won a lot of games this season. Has a lot of talent, has some guys who are going to play in the NBA, has at least one guy who's a candidate for the ACC Player of the Year, I think, in Armando Bacot. And what Bacot ended up with. He had foul trouble of 7 points, 2 of 6 from the floor, 8 rebounds, 4 fouls, 3 turnovers. Not a great game for him. If you compare that stat line to John Hughley, 18 points and 5 boards, 6 of 10 from the floor, 1 of 2 from 3. How about Hughley's 3-pointer when he gets an and 1 and goes for a 4-point play? You knew something was up when you saw a shot like that go in. And Hughley goes 5 of 6 from the free throw line as well. This is we don't need any negativity tonight. So RJC, man, or whoever it is, man, it's we don't need any negativity, because this was a good team win, and I think it was a really good team performance, and I think it's got to be a little encouraging. I don't know if they're going to have, I don't know if Ethan Horton's going to go 5 of 5 from 3. I don't know if they're going to get up 20 on every ACC opponent that they play the rest of the way. I think there were extremes in this game that may not be duplicated, may be tough to replicate in the future. So I don't think it's going to be exactly like this, but I think they're showing more and more signs of the things they can do well offensively. I mean, this team is always going to need to hang its hat on defense, and I thought they played pretty well defensively tonight, but they're showing more and more signs of what they might be able to do well offensively. And that's the encouraging thing, because if this team can improve offensively and keep up their defensive intensity, they have a chance. They have a chance to win a couple of these games down the stretch. Let's see here. So I'll just read a few of these comments. Sports World PA says, great team win. That's what Pitt needs. Got to play together. 3 ACC wins in a row. Very unexpectedly happy with that. At the moment, showing signs of improvement. Real funny guys making lots of jokes. See, the Booty Bandit, which is a very funny name, says 3 ACC wins in a row. I would have bet my house on that not happening. I'll give Jeff Capel his credit today and today only. Yeah, Pac-Man 2019 says, I like my crow extra crispy. Let's see. Troy Parlay Malu, it's a funny name. H2P, last time 3 straight February wins. Steven Adams was a Panther. Let's see what else. Pittsburgh Sports All the Time says, wow, that's all I can say. I wasn't sure I was watching Pitt basketball tonight with that 3-point shooting. Let's see here. Sports World PA says Jeff Capel's future relies on him keeping this roster together. This offseason can't have a repeat of the last 2 offseason departures. So that's going to be really interesting to watch, because kind of like I said, everybody on this roster, all the scholarship guys have eligibility remaining. They can all come back next year except for Mo Gee. He's the only guy who will be out of eligibility after this season. And obviously, I think if you're Jeff Capel, you want to keep everybody. You want everybody to come back. I don't think there's any question about that. But I think if you were going to kind of go down the list, certainly the guys who started tonight, John Hughley, Jamarius Burton, Ethiel Horton, Femi Odikale, those are the top of your list. You want those 4 back, plus Nike Sabandi, and I think Sabandi will be back. I think he's said as much. So you want those 5 guys back. That's where you want to start. You go beyond that into the bench. I really think Nate Santos and Chris Payton, they're not getting a lot of playing time. Neither one played tonight. They're not showing a whole lot. But I think there's enough hope for their future and for their potential. Santos as a 3-point shooting specialist, and then Payton just having a lot of athleticism, being able to make a lot of plays around the basket and kind of use some of his athleticism. I think the coaches are intrigued enough by him that they hope he sticks around so they can try to develop him. Developing players over the course of a few years, it feels very foreign. It feels like something that just doesn't happen very often anymore. And it's really a product of like the last 2 seasons. Not just at Pitt, but across college basketball. The guys just move a lot. Guys transfer a lot. And you don't really have an opportunity to develop players. I think the Pitt staff would love to have an opportunity to develop Nate Santos and Chris Payton. I think they like what each of those guys brings to the table. And that, So I think for that reason, they'd like to have those guys stick around. Now, so if you could get those 4 starters from tonight, plus Sabandi, plus those 2, that's seven players. Oh, and then, I think right along with them, I sort of skipped over these 2 guys, but Noah Collier and Will Jeffress. I think they'd like to have those 2 back as well. If you could somehow pull that off, that'd be 9. And you still have 4 scholarship spots for whoever else wants to come back out of Dan Oladapo and Maxim Madison and Onibuchi Iziakudo, and then whatever else you can bring in on top of that. I think the priority this offseason, not to go too far down a discussion about recruiting, because I know how everybody feels about the 2022 recruiting class and how empty it is. I obviously there's going to be a focus on transfers this offseason. I think the Pitt coaches probably feel like they're close to being able to put together a competent roster, an effective roster, a decent roster. I think they're going to go into this offseason feeling like they need a power forward as sort of their top priority, is finding a transfer power forward. My guess, and kind of what I've said all along, and sort of what I'll stick to, not necessarily based on any inside info, it's nothing I've been explicitly told, but just sort of my guess, is that Pitt this offseason will have 3 open scholarship spots to use, and they'll use them on 2 transfers and a high school kid. And the high school kid will probably be a late add, somebody in the spring like a Nate Santos, who may or may not be positioned to come in and help you right away. May or may not be positioned to come in and play a lot of minutes and really contribute. And I think for this Pitt staff, they're looking at next season as being very important for obvious reasons. I mean, they need to take a significant step forward in the win column and in the competitiveness and where they place in the ACC and kind of, where they are in the world of college basketball. They need to take a big step forward. And I think to do that, they're going to need to bring most of those guys back that I talked about, particularly Hughley, Horton, Odekale, Burton, and the rest. And then they're going to need to fill in around those guys, number 1, with a transfer power forward. With a power forward who's got experience at the college level and is ready to come in and try and help a team win. Whether it's a younger transfer or a grad transfer like a Mogi, whatever it is. I mean, I think that's where the priority is getting a transfer power forward who can come in, step into the starting lineup, and really kind of complete the starting lineup. And then after that, you look for, maybe another transfer power forward or maybe a transfer guard kind of, play as a backup point guard, although that can be a tough thing to find, a guy who wants to transfer to be a backup. And then, like I say, I wouldn't be surprised if they go for a high school guy, like one high school guy maybe to fill that out. This recruiting class of 2022 is just not a heavy focus for the staff right now. They're just not pushing real hard to get a recruit who's ready to come in. And I know people are holding that against them, but I think there are a couple things that, it just doesn't stand out to me as much as maybe some other issues. Partially because I don't think there are many guys out there that they would be able to get right now who could help them next season. And that's the priority and the focus. And if you say, well, they need to still get some guys that they can develop over the next few years to build a foundation for the program, to be able to build a core that carries the program, not just for next season, but for the next 3 seasons. And to that, I would say, and we talked about this on the message boards, actually. We had a really good thread. At a time when there's, so many threads on the message boards are just, fire the staff, fire the staff, fire the staff. We had a really good discussion today, earlier in the day on Wednesday about, I guess it's still Wednesday now, a discussion about how taking transfers isn't necessarily, mutually exclusive from building the program for the long term. And what I mean by that, and what I said, and I actually wasn't the first person to say this, somebody else had said it on the board as well. If you bring in a young transfer, a freshman or sophomore transfer, not only do they already have experience at the college level and they've been through a college strength system and, they're maybe a little bit more physically mature and ready to play, but you're getting him after he's transferred. He's used his one free transfer. And the next time he wants to transfer, if he doesn't want to stick around much beyond, the first year, he's probably going to have to sit out when he goes somewhere else. And so in a way, you're almost, not entirely, but almost guaranteed more development time with a young transfer than you are with a high school kid. Because a high school kid who comes in and doesn't play much, a lot of those guys transfer. And quite frankly, those are the guys you might look for in the transfer portal. Those younger freshmen and sophomores who are trying to make a move. And so I feel like it almost, and this just, this might be just sort of a perception thing of the moment, but it almost feels like you're less likely to hold on to a high school recruit long term than you are to hold on to a transfer long term. And again, that might just be born of the moment, just perception. The data may not back that up, but guys transfer, guys are running. You know what I mean? Guys are taking off. If a great example is Kareem Koulibaly, right? He goes to St. Bonaventure. He's playing 9 minutes a game off the bench right now for St. Bonaventure. That's the kind of stat line that would usually lead a guy to transfer. But Kareem Koulibaly already transferred once, so he's probably going to stick around for the next 2 years with St. Bonaventure, and that staff will have a chance to develop him. I think the Pitt staff would like to have a chance to develop guys, but I think they're worried that guys are going to leave. That if they bring in a high school guy, if you bring in a high school guard in the 2022 recruiting class, right? First of all, you're going to have a hard time finding a guy who really wants to come here. Because they're going to look at it and say, you've got Femi, you've got Ethiel, you've got Burton, you'll probably have Nike Sabandi. Where am I going to play? Right? So if you bring in a high school guard in this 2022 recruiting class, and they come in next year and play 5 minutes a game, because they're behind four upperclassmen guards who are pretty good, look like they could be pretty good, what do you think that freshman guard is going to do? He's going to say, well, I guess I could wait around again. And, my sophomore year, what's his name? Burton and Sabandi, those guys will be gone. So I guess I could play then as like the third guard on the team. No, he's going to leave. He's going to go. I think there's a real possibility of it. And that makes it difficult. It makes it difficult to recruit those guys. And it makes it difficult to expect to be able to hold on to them. Now, if you can get a freshman or sophomore transfer to come in, a guy who's a little bit more ready, then maybe you've got a little bit more of an opportunity to develop those guys. And so it almost seems to be counterintuitive, this idea that you can, this idea that you could almost have more guaranteed stability with transfers than you do with high school kids, but that's kind of the way things at least seem to be right now. But that's a tangent on the recruiting front. It's just because it was something I was thinking about earlier today, and when I realized that when I said we were going to do this post-game show, I was actually like, well, this transfer recruiting discussion would be a good one to have, since probably not going to really want to talk about this game. That was when we didn't know that Pitt was going to have a huge performance, have a huge game, a huge win against North Carolina. Just glancing down at my notes here, John Hughley got his fourth foul with 7:45 on the clock. And North Carolina followed that up with back-to-back three-pointers to make it a 59-46 game. That was a huge moment. Will Jeffress scored his basket right around that time. Might have been a travel. Wasn't called, so it didn't happen. Huge play from Will Jeffress. There were just so many different moments. I mean, guys stepped up and made a lot of big plays, and it was pretty impressive. Pretty impressive performance, and we'll see what they're able to sustain from this. I think when you look at some of the things that stood out the most in this game, you say, okay, what can they sustain and carry over? I think you want John Hughley to keep playing the way he's been playing. He's had a couple good games in a row after some struggles. You want, and I'm not going in order of priorities here, but I think you want Femi Odekale to keep playing the way he's been playing in the last couple of games. You'd love to have that 3-game stretch when he was averaging 20 points per game, but I think they lost every one of those games. I think what he's been doing recently and how he's setting up his teammates and picking his shots on when he wants to try to score. I think that's what you want out of Femi Odukale. Jamarius Burton just needs to keep being himself and doing what he's been doing pretty much ever since he got his legs under him earlier this season when he came in. And then Ethiel Horton, you need that outside shooting threat. Oh, and Mo Gee just has to keep being Mo Gee. I mean, because being Mo Gee is a pretty good thing right now. Blocking shots and knocking down threes, just kind of being all over the place. It's hard to dislike what Mo Gee has been contributing to this team. It's been fun to watch. So, are there things to build on there? Are there things that you can realistically expect to carry over? I think there are. They don't have to be necessarily at the level they were at tonight. They can be at a level slightly below that, kind of an averaging out, and still produce good results, I think, for this team. Let's get into the comments here and see what we have. Let's see. RJ Seaman 38 says, Chris, given Capel's track record, explain why players would trust Capel. Well, he's had two guys get arrested, and he stood by them and took up for them and supported them. I think actually, I'm not going to go case by case on this. I think Jeff Capel is a player's coach. Maybe at times to his detriment, but I think he's a player's coach. I think his players like him and have respect for him. I think you're always going to have guys who feel like they're not getting the ball enough. You're always going to have guys who feel like they should be the man. You're always going to have guys who don't like it when other players on the team get attention. But I think Jeff Capel has a pretty good reputation as being a player's coach. I don't see any issue about players, trusting or not trusting Jeff Capel. I don't. I think there are a lot of issues, but that's not one that I would think of players having a personal issue with Jeff Capel or a trust issue with Jeff Capel. That's one I would have to disagree with sort of the assertion. Let's see here. I don't all these negative comments. John Christofich says, you can't build a program with transfer players. You have to be able to recruit high school players. So I agree with you on the very principle, the basic principle of what you're saying. I agree. And I definitely agreed with you in 2008. I definitely agree with you in 2012. I definitely agree with you in 2003. I probably agreed with you in 2016, 2017. 2022 is a weird time, though, man. 2022 is a weird time. Lots of guys are transferring. Lots of guys. Some with good reasons. The school is just not a fit. Some for not such good reasons. They're not getting as much playing time as they want. They're not getting as many shots as they want. But they're going. They're transferring. And while I don't advise making it a habit of living off the transfer portal, I think at some point you do need to recruit, high school recruits. There's something also to be said for the fact that if you're Pitt, you're probably mostly going to be getting guys who need to develop over the course of a few years. You're going to be getting guys who need to grow. And with a lot of high school guys you recruit, you're not going to get that chance. You're not going to get the opportunity to fully develop them. Look at Xavier Johnson and Trey McGowans and Audis Toney and Justin Champagny. You didn't even, you got 2 seasons out of McGowans, 2 seasons out of Champagny, almost 3 seasons out of Johnson and Toney. 2 seasons out of Kareem Koulibaly. It's tough, I think, to hold on to those guys for a long term and develop them. Whereas, again, this, the transfer rules that give these guys a one free transfer where they can transfer anywhere one time and play right away, that is, it's a game changer. It's a game changer because it freed up the movement for these players to move. But it also means that when you get a guy in, it's kind of the trade-off is like, all right, you've used your one free transfer. This school you're going to go to next, you need to be around for a while. And so you almost have better or more guaranteed development opportunities with the transfers than you do with the high school guys you recruit. And I know it sounds counterintuitive. And believe me, John, I it's taken me a while to get my head around it, and I'm still not entirely sure that I endorse the idea. But there's some merit to it. Not necessarily building your entire program off transfers, but going to that well often. I mean, there's enough water in the well to keep going to it. All right, back to this game. I think like we've said, I think it was a great team effort, a great team performance. I think, whether it was going up by 21 or holding off Carolina after they cut it to 6 in the final 2 minutes. I think it was a really valiant effort, valiant performance by Pitt. And I think if you're a Pitt fan, you should feel good about this right now. You only have to do it for a night. I promise I won't make you feel good about it tomorrow. I won't insist that you have positive vibes tomorrow. But for tonight, I think you got to enjoy this. I mean, this was a good win over a blue blood program on the road. I mean, look at us. We're sitting here at 11 o'clock at night. And, there's a bunch of us still hanging out talking about this basketball game. I don't know if that would have happened if it was a loss, but it definitely worked out well that we did this post-game show after a win, for sure. Tyler Buchanan says, this is a big offseason for Will Jeffress. We really need him to grow and develop. I think his maturation will be key to whether this team will continue to trend upward. If you could somehow have next season, start 3 guards, Burton, Notakali, Horton, Hughley at center, and then your transfer power forward. And then you could bring Nike Samandi off the bench. You could bring Noah Collier off the bench. You could bring Will Jeffress off the bench. You could possibly bring, Santos, Payton, whoever it is. I like that rotation. You know what I mean? I like that set of personnel. I like Will Jeffress's potential. When Jeff Cable talked about him being a 3-and-D guy, a guy who could, make threes and defend pretty much all positions at the other end of the court. I like seeing Will Jeffress in that role. I like envisioning him in that role. And he's done some things since he moved out of the starting lineup, since he stopped getting so many minutes. I like how he's been playing. I feel like he has made some improvements in recent weeks. And I think he made a couple big plays, in each of these 3 wins here. I like what he's been doing. And you just need him to keep going and keep growing and keep taking steps forward. If he does, those minutes will start going back up. And I don't think he cracks back into the starting lineup, but I think he could get more minutes than what he played tonight. 19, I think. Let me bring up the stats. Yeah, Jeffress played 19 minutes, scored 2 points, 1 of 3 from the floor. Missed his only 3-point attempt, had 1 rebound. It was a big offensive rebound, if I recall. Let me just double check that before I spout out. It was a big offensive rebound. I don't think they got a second chance point out of it, but it was a big play. It was certainly a big play. And I thought he had a few of those. And his bucket was big, too. He scored... right in that stretch when Hughley got his 4th foul, and they had back-to-back 3-pointers for North Carolina. Pitt had to take a timeout. There was pressure all over the place. The crowd was fired up. Will Jeffress came up with a big basket at that point. So I'm with you. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think his ceiling is really high. He just needs to keep growing, keep developing, for sure. Let's see. All right, I think that's good for the comments and questions. Listen, if you want to jump in on the chat during these live streams, we'd love to have you. Go to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and turn on the notifications. You'll get a notification whenever we go live. So if you miss, when I'm tweeting about it, or you miss when I post on the message board or something like that, you can always get a notification that we're live, so you never miss one of these live streams. And then you can jump in and ask questions and comments too. Subscribe youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's let me see if I can point at it. If you're watching the video, yeah, there's a subscribe button right down there. You see it? Click that subscribe button, and then you'll be subscribed to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you check out Panther-Lair.com. Also, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. It's the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of your closest Pitt fan friends. Last thing I got to tell you about is home field, right? How can you hate a shirt like that on a night like this? Super soft, fits really well. One of the best t-shirts I own. The other best t-shirt I own is also from Home Field, so you need to go there. Homefieldapparel.com. Check out their Pitt collection, and if you're a first-time shopper there, use the promo code LAIR, L-A-I-R. You can get 15% off your first order. So make sure you go check that out. Thanks again to everybody who tuned in on the live stream, post comments, questions, and all those things. It was a lot of fun. Really appreciate it. I'm glad we could do this tonight. Maybe we'll have to do another post-game show. Look ahead at the basketball schedule, see what works. But thanks again for everybody tuning in. Appreciate your time. We'll have the Panthers Insider Show on 93.7 The Fan Saturday morning. And then Pitt, Georgia Tech on Saturday night. And we'll talk to you next week for another Panther-Lair show. So stay tuned at Panther-Lair.com. We'll tell you when the next show is coming. Until then, have a great rest of the night. Have a great rest of the week. And we will talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.